pleasure to present Ayami Sakai-Yamazaki, Assistant Director for the Office of Policies Against Marine Plastic Pollution in the Marine Environment Division, Ministry of the Environment, Japan, and Dr. Parsa Kian, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at Kyushu University in Fukuoka, Japan. So Ayami and Parsa, it's my pleasure to hand over to you, and you have 13 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Good afternoon, and from Japan, good evening, everyone. My name is Ayami from Ministry of the Environment, and also for this section, Dr. Parsa will also explain about this project because MOE and Kyushu University in Japan are working together to manage AOMI. So today I want to explain about a Japanese project on marine plastic litter monitoring data sharing. And also we want to introduce our database called AOMI, Address of Ocean Microplastics. So next, please. Thank you. So at first, I will explain the background of building database. So in 2015, there was G7 summit, and at that summit, G7 leaders shared the importance of harmonizing monitoring methods and monitoring data of ocean surface microplastics. And at that time, Japan declared to take a lead in monitoring data and harmonizing monitoring data. So from that time, Japan doing some research and also held some meeting with international experts. And in 2019, we finally published the guidelines for harmonizing ocean surface microplastics monitoring methods. And at the same year, in 2019, there was G20 summit in Japan, Osaka, and they shared Osaka Blue Ocean Vision. And this vision aims to reduce additional plastic pollution by marine plastic litter to zero by 2050 through a comprehensive life cycle approach. So it is a very big initiative. And after that, Japan declared to build an international database to collect monitoring data. And so in 2020, Japan started the Marine Plastic Litter Monitoring Project. And in 2023, we first held the international workshop on data harmonization. And finally, in 2024, so last year, we released the AOMI. So next, please. So as I said before, we published guidelines for monitoring methods in 2019. So the objective of this guideline is to enable researchers of ocean surface microplastic to adapt same or similar monitoring protocols. So it is very important to collect monitoring data, but also it is important to use the data to further research or policy making. But to do this, it is necessary to build the international database for monitoring data. So MOE Japan built the address of ocean microplastics, we call it AOMI. So all of the data on AOMI are in line with the guidelines. So all the data are comparable data. So we can utilize it to further research or policy making. So next slide, please. So please look at the below images of 2D maps. So on AOMI, it provides survey point distribution and also particle density, and also survey frequency on 2D maps. So these information are visualized on 2D maps. And the objective of this AOMI project is to provide a global map of microplastic density distribution. So we hope that AOMI become a global network hub to share and compile monitoring data. And as I said before, all the data on AOMI are harmonized in line with the guideline. So we can utilize this data we can utilize the data all over the world. But to use this data, we hope we would like for policymakers or researchers or general public to use the data from AOMI to further research or policy making, because it is very important for policymakers to conduct science-based policy making. So we hope that guideline and also AOMI will give good information, good data for policymakers and researchers or general public. So until this slide, I will talk about the outline of AOMI. So from next slide, Dr. Parsa will explain about how to conduct quality control, how to modify the data before putting into AOMI. So next slide, please. And Dr. Parsa, please start the next explanation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank my colleague for actually giving a very good overview of the overall mission of the AOMI database. Now, for my part, I work as a data analyst in charge of building and processing this entire database. And I'd like to take a really small peek into the back end of this database and discuss how we really process, and more importantly, how do we quality control of the data, because that is such a crucial part of basically gathering and also harmonizing all the marine plastic pollution data that we store. So as my colleague mentioned, we gathered all the experts which we could find around the world into Japan back in 2023, of course, including our friends from the ODIS as well. And we basically worked together to create one unified, harmonized standards on how to store this kind of data. And we can see like a small summary of that here, where we basically divided our data into 3 different categories. Our first category, the fundamental data. This is the data without which we cannot include any kind of data into our whole center. For example, like the date where the sample was collected or the whole GPS location. These are fundamental information without which we really cannot store that data and then actually present it. Then we have essential data. These are data that are really important, really essential. However, without it, we can still present that data, although it won't be perfect. And then we have optional data, which is any kind of additional information which the researchers who are kind enough to share their data with us would like to present. Could we go to the next slide, please? Now, in that regard, after we receive that data, then we expose it into a very rigorous quality control session where we basically would grade that data based on the whole quality of the research done, based on how we collected that data. And we can basically see that the highest grade would be 5, and that's a data which is completely in line with those harmonized standards which we basically created in collaboration with our colleagues and friends from all around the world. And after that, we basically process the data a bit further in the back end. We basically have 3 levels of processing. Level 0 would be the whole raw data which we receive. Level 1 is where we try to remove those fibrous microplastics. This is due to possible contamination during sampling. Level 2 would be like a vertical integration technique where we try to create like a 2-dimensional map of this plastic pollution. And level 3 is actually our own in-house built optimum interpolation technique. This is an advanced statistical technique where we try to create like a two-dimensional map of this problem, because those samples that are taken, they're actually like a small dot on a larger global map. So we created this statistical technique to basically convert that into a two-dimensional gridded map, which will give us a much better understanding of the scope of this problem. I think we should go to the next slide. I think I kind of explained that ahead. Can we go to the next slide, please? Right, so these were all the 4 levels which I explained ahead. And of course, we decided to have a 2x5 gridded data for our level 3 data, which of course I will show later on in this presentation. So could we please go to the next slide? Perfect. Now, here we have a quick overview of the current state of the AOMI database. We have more than 13,000 data points collected. Actually, we have about 13,800 data points in our current version. We have contribution from 18 different countries and of course institutions from all around the world, as you can see in this map. And our data spans back as early as 1984, which is quite surprising. I think that might have been some of the earliest data collections we have. There might be some data earlier than that too. And can we go to the next slide, please? And here we have an overall overview of the location at which those samples were collected. And as we saw in the previous slide and this one, the majority of the contributions come from the United States, Japan, and of course, European Union. Of course, these are quite wealthier countries who have basically invested more into research in these areas. So the geographic location also is in line with that, which is mostly from the North Atlantic and also North Pacific Ocean. And if you look at our next slide, so this is that level 3 data, that two-dimensional gridded map, as I mentioned. And so we can see here that the actual location of the majority of the data collected falls within that range. Now, our goal for the future of AOMI is to, as my colleague mentioned, is to make AOMI that one go-to open database for everyone to access this database for their individual needs. I mean, today we have people such as high school students, even PhD students, and of course also policymakers, and of course other government agencies contacting us, basically working with us closely. We share this data with them. And our goal for the future is to fill in those gap areas, as you can see in this map, by collaborating with our researchers and colleagues from other data gap countries in the African region, in the South American region, of course, in the Indian subcontinent as well. We are looking at collaborations in the future to gather more data from these regions and to fill that map so we can have a very complete image of this global issue, so that we can offer this complete one-place database for researchers, policymakers, and even citizens, concerned citizens who just want to learn more about this issue, to everyone, so that they can have more information in hand when they're about to make important policies for the future. And that's it from our team. Please go to the next slide. And I would highly recommend everyone to actually look at our website. Actually, if I can quickly, I just want to share my screen, and I just want to share like the actual AOMI website, if possible. Yeah, perfect. So this is the current outline of the AOMI website. If you do go to the maps, you can see a current live map of the AOMI data all around the world. This is basically after the whole processing is done. I have left a link to this website in the chat. Please feel free to check out this website. And if you have any questions, if you'd like to collaborate with us, and more importantly, if you have data that you would like to include in the AOMI, contact us and we will take care of the rest. We will handle all the entire processing as well. So I think I did it perfectly on time. That's it from our team, and we are eager to hear your comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ayami, and thank you, Parsa. Congratulations on the progress made by your team in just a few years. And thanks also for the view behind the scenes on your quality control, which is really important. And overall, the resources that you now have made available on this globally important issue. Thank you. Do we have any questions? I think we have a couple of minutes. If there are any questions, either from the chat or
I'm not seeing any in the chat at the moment.
Okay, if you'd like, anyone would like to raise their hands. Andy?
Yeah, two quick questions.
Right.
One was related. I noticed that you, in the distribution of dots, you had dots in the Great Lakes and North America. Is it the intention to also look at lake pollution as well, or just salt water? And the second question has to do with we were involved in some microplastic studies in sediments in parts of eastern Canada. So is there any expectation to expand into other than surface microplastics?
These are great questions. Thank you for actually mentioning that. Regarding the lake question, the current information on the American Great Lakes, this was already submitted to us way before. So we did include it in the first version of AOMI. We are now looking into expanding the scope of AOMI to include lakes and also rivers, and maybe in the future even beach data. Of course, we have to work with our colleagues and friends around the world in building the same similar standards on how to collect data, what sort of standards do we have. For example, regarding lake data, how large should the lake be before we can actually consider its data, and of course, so forth and so on. But I can tell you that in the near future, we're going to expand it into lakes as well, because when we launched AOMI last year, we got a lot of positive feedback from researchers, both in Japan and also internationally. They told us they have a lot of data collected from lakes, and they would love to send it to us. So we are going to expand AOMI to include lakes as well, so that we can have a lot more data to actually present to everyone. The second question regarding sediments, could you elaborate specifically what kind of data that is?
Yeah, just a sec. Well, the project was with us and the University of New Brunswick in St. John, and there was a number of samples taken and then processed to identify microplastics. I must admit that a number of the plastics were fibrous, like you suggested. So I didn't realize that might have been a contamination. That they were. I tried to take care of not having, clothing in the laboratory. So it was a filtering technique to get down to just looking at plastics with using various techniques to get rid of the sediments. So if you want, I can pass on I'll pass on the work to you, and you can look at it at the actual techniques. I was on the data side of this, the mapping side of this, and not actually in the laboratory. So not sure that I can provide a good description of what was actually going on in the lab.
I think that would be great. If you could share that research with us, I'll just go through it, and then we can see if it is within the current or the future scope of AOMI, and then we would be more than happy to include it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Catherine also has a question, please.
Yeah, I think thanks, Andy, actually mentioning the freshwater, and it's very exciting to hear about your project, because definitely I like the idea of trying to make the data or the information policy relevant And I guess one of my questions was, would you consider including river data, since we know most of the microplastic pollution that's reaching the ocean is coming from a source, most likely land-based, coming via the rivers. And for policymakers to make decisions, I guess that source to sea approach is very exciting new adventure, and I could imagine really, really super difficult to implement. So that answers that question. The other question I had was actually on the fibers, because microfibers are microplastics. So I know from working with microplastics experts that they are removing a lot from certain samples. But is there have you any indication of the experts you're working with that people are looking more to the fibers so that we get information on the actual fibers as well, because they are plastic and they're tiny and it's really hard. And I know in terms of the information you're trying to distribute, this is a really interesting topic, because the fibers get mentioned and microplastics experts still removing them from the samples, but it's in a way data. We know, if that's contaminated, we know there's fibers, they are plastic. Is there any indication? I'm not asking you, are you doing this? I'm just wanting to see, because you have that worldwide network.
This is an excellent question. And of course, this is a really big problem as well, because we know that fibrous microplastics, as you mentioned, do exist in our oceans, in our freshwater even. And and this is a big part of that whole microplastic pollution, as you rightfully mentioned. The problem is, how do we separate that from a potential contamination? For example, in our case, where we're gathering data from floating microplastics, when researchers go out in the ocean with their net to collect that data, so how do we know how to separate if it's a real fibrous microplastic or if it's a contamination from the net? So that's a really complicated problem. And I think maybe in the future, we can put in some extra measures to include that. But that is really, really technical. This is really specific.
Yes, and I understand. I just wanted to see if there's some general, from the people looking at these samples, in the field, are they trying to, look at that?
So what I can tell you from my side, from the data that I get, is that we often ask the researchers to actually tell us how much of that data was fibrous microplastics so that we can remove it from the data. But what they do with that data, it really depends on that individual research group.
Okay. Thank you. No, it's great. Very exciting. Thanks for that presentation.
Thank you. Actually, before I forget, I think if I can have like 30 seconds more, we are now looking to actually expand AOMI and to have a major data sharing project with other larger databases such as NOAA in the US, EBONet in Europe, even CFAS in the UK. We are looking to actually offer our data to each other and mine data from each other to make sure that basically everyone has like an equal piece of this pie, and then to basically share all of this mega data with each other would actually enrich every database. So that's the next step of the AOMI database, but to basically expand it even further and further ahead. So that's
very exciting.
Thank you. And thanks for those questions, and very exciting future ahead. Thank you.